STARLIMS webinar series. On behalf of STARLIMS, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's event, The Role of Technology in Your Lab Digital Transformation. My name is Caroline Araujo, and I'm the marketing manager at STARLIMS and will be moderating the event. Today's speakers are Janet Gonzalez, the Senior Product Manager for the Quality Manufacturing Solution, and Brandon McMahon, Software Tester at STARLIMS. Following the presentation, we will move into a live questions and answer session where you can pose questions to today's speakers. Please remember, you can submit questions at any point during the webinar using the questions panel in the menu on the right. We'll try to address as many questions as possible during our time together. But if we run out of time, the unaddressed questions will be answered via email. Additional resources can be accessed via the resource window also located on the right of your screen. And just to remind you that the recording of this session will be available later this week at STARLIMS website. I'll now hand over to Janet.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night. It's a pleasure and honor to be part of this seminar. As Carolina mentioned, the webinar today is the role of technology in your lab digital transformation. So thank you for the opportunity. The agenda, we're going to discover the benefits of the lab digital transformation. And we're going to learn more about how STARLIMS solutions can support organizations working toward optimization and digital transformation. And we're going to be able to understand how automated testing tools can support your organizations to significantly reduce the likelihood of human errors. I would like to start by talking about the manufacturing industry trends. I think it's important to discuss those. And there are many industry trends that impact the laboratory operations. For example, the pharmaceutical manufacturing is experiencing a period of rapid innovation, and now even more with COVID. Pharma industry keep facing the challenge of cope with different regulations and put into place initiatives toward the global regulatory harmonization. Other challenges are the entrance of new technologies such as biotechnology, specialized personalized medicine that force the industry to compete and join the biotechnology business. And not to mention the constant pressure to be efficient. However, GMP compliance remains as the foremost concern for pharma manufacturing. I have an interesting quote from the investment bank that from 2017 and 2021, it was anticipated that the pharmaceutical industry sales had at least $147 billion due to expiring patents. So the challenges for the pharmaceutical industry are real. Also, it is forecasted, if we talk about contract manufacturing, that there's going to be a significant growth of outsourcing. So pharma companies are focusing on the core competency and subcontracting work to contract manufacturing. So the contract manufacturer and contract services are facing an increased demand on services, putting challenges on scalability, visibility, not only in the processing side, but also on the client side. And for petro refinery and chemical, they are looking for ways to automate their operations and diversify the business. And most important, comply with the regulatory measures, including environmental regulations. So these trends and challenges are forcing the manufacturing industry and the laboratories that support the development of new products and the transfer of products and the quality testing of products to reframe the way they operate. So laboratories need to cope with the industry trend and align to the organizational demands and demonstrate that they can make a positive impact on the operations. So the question is, what is the operational impact on the labs to the organizations, and in turn, I call it to the bottom line. And these are some of the main buckets where the laboratory impact the operations. The laboratory impacts the growth of an organization by ensuring that the products are delivered and distributed on time, because they need to deliver the product testing results on time. It impacts compliance. The laboratory needs to ensure that it's not a cause of either consent decree, warning letter, that the operations are to the T, that they're audit ready. They impact efficiency, right? And through implementation of initiatives, they handle the research properly so they can deliver the products out of the door. And with consolidation, right? Harmonization of the lab, centralized configured lab. So there is a distinction that we need to make when we talk about digital transformation. And it's the difference between digitization and digitalization. Although sometimes these terms are used interchangeably. Gartners define the digitization as the way to convert the existing paper-based process, they call it one-on-one, to electronic forms. However, digitization does not exploit all the advantages and possibilities that digitalization can offer. And they define digitalization in a nutshell as transforming your business. The use of digital technologies to change the business model and provide new ways of revenue and value-producing opportunities. So in a nutshell, what I call, they define digitalization as a new way to do business transformation. This trend forced a laboratory to start rethinking the ways that they do business within the laboratory framework, right? And laboratories now need to start looking for what we call now the smart lab initiatives or programs, in which the leaders of the laboratory need to start looking at the different processes and workflows improvement opportunities, look at technological solutions that can change the way the laboratory operates, look for improved interdepartmental collaboration, centralization, data visualization, integration, interoperability, opportunities of automation, and of course, regulatory compliance. And when you look at all these smart lab initiatives, every single one of them are touched by technological solutions. So not only process and workflows can be improved through technological solutions, but also interdepartmental collaboration, data centralization, visibility on the data, interoperability and automation, and of course, regulatory compliance, okay? So what are the benefits of the lab digital transformation? So let's talk about the benefits of the lab digital transformation, that the laboratory will reap these benefits, of course, depending where they are on the transformational journey. And if you see, depends of where you are on your digital transformation journey will be the initiatives that you are going to be implementing. For example, if you still are working in a manual paper-based operation, doing manual sample login, manual result entry, handling still different spreadsheet, logbooks, notebooks, performing manual checks and alerts, or manual review and approval, lengthy preparation, doing reports, you need to move what we call to the digital world, in which you will handle your electronic material testing, ordering, and reporting in a digital manner, where you will have automated interface where you're going to manage your laboratory workflows to ensure consistency in an electronic way, in which you handle your inventory and proactive ordering of inventory in an electronic way, and also notifications and alerts and review by exception. Meaning the laboratory, consolidated in a central database all the processes and data associated to the operation of the lab for informed decision making. And of course, being in a digital way will allow you to have the information available, centralized, searchable, so in the case you have an audit. So what I call it support audit readiness. But the laboratories want to be beyond what I call digitization. The laboratory want to be looking at the future, right? What we call the lab of the future. And the laboratory wants to be looking at analytics, not only analytics, but also the ways that they can handle predictions to do work. We're looking at real-time instrument data parsing. We want to look at and be at the level where our decision-making is based on data, to have, rather than reactive alerts, proactive alerts, by not having to review all the data that comes from the lab and have the system work for me and automate review and review by exception, by having real-time visibility for decision-making and being able to drill down into the data for root cause analysis, what I call the data-driven process optimization. Also, the laboratory wants to be to the point where they easily know where the resources are and they can quickly optimize their resource scheduling based on the quick changes on the planning demand schedule. Again, the data-driven process optimization, and this is very important. So it's beyond data centralization and digitization, is a complete transformation of the business. So the goal is not only eliminate or reduce the manual processes, right? And automate where possible, but the main goal is leverage on the power of the data. And not only the normal gains that the digitization will give you, like the better quality of data, the reduce of transcription error, the increase of efficiency on the lab, and the reduction of the overall turnaround, but in fact the lab, through the digitalization and digital transformation, and as I mentioned, leverage the power of the data for decision making, want to be able to be proactive. They want to be able to use predictions. They want to be able to use machine learning and algorithms to perform forecasting. They want to have the ability to anticipate and prepare even before issues happen. Some of the examples that I can give is, imagine that you can predict instrument breakage. Imagine that you can propose, based on the data collected and these algorithms and this machine learning, to extend or decrease the instrument maintenance or calibrations, and in turn, increase the uptime of that equipment. Imagine that you can repair and maintain an equipment even before it breaks. So prevention, right? And determine and justify the extension of a shelf life of a stock standard based on historical research. So what I call the power of data. And I can go on and on with these examples. Another example would be forecast inventory and resources needs and proactively prepare by the use of simulations. And again, I can go on and on and on with the possibilities of digital transformation. However, there are first steps on the journey of digital transformations that needs to be made. So if you look at this list, these are some of the areas, not all inclusive, that can be impacted by digital transformation. Security, keeping the pace with technological advances could prevent a cyber attack. Automation, having the ability to automatically log samples as soon the manufacturing produce the batch, or have a tight interface with ERP for assignation of testing profiles, so to ensure that the right testing profile and the corresponding current method versions are assigned. So we're talking about a laboratory that is interconnected, leveraging the power of analytics. So not only you're going to see where you are, but you can leverage of the power of data to the right root causes, conclusions, spot trends, analyze the utilization of your resources, and predict utilization based on upcoming load. And if we talk about integration and interoperability, being able to real-time collect data from your balances, your standalone system, what I call real-time data capture. And in terms of interoperability, we can think about those ancillary solutions that we use in the quality assurance, quality control environment that interact day by day with the laboratory processes, like interconnectivity, as I mentioned before, with the enterprise resource planning system, or interconnectivity with your system to track investigations, or the system that handles your learning management system, or your training of your employees, or the master system that handles your documentation. So all these are some of the areas impacted by digital transformation. I found this a very interesting statistic that I want to share, going back to the impact of digital transformation on the laboratory. And what it really struck me was, what is the percentage of errors for operations that are still in manual? 10 to 30% of errors associated of not having operations automated. And this is according to the Journal of Lab Automation. And even having automation, the error rate is between 1 and 5%. So even we automate, there still are going to be errors. But the question is, what that error represents for organizations in terms of cost, in terms of growth, in terms of risk, right? It might be a recall, it might be a consent decree, it could be a warning letter, it might be that operations needs to close. Another interesting research finding that I want to share, and going back about the importance of digital transformation, is related to cybersecurity. And according to Varonis, manufacturing companies account for 20% of ransomware attacks. And this is big. And the average cost of data breach is $3.86 million in 2020. So these numbers, when I look at this is scary. And one of my former companies were attacked, and obviously this wasn't published, but they spent months trying to recover all the servers and systems that support their operations. Not only the laboratory was impacted, but their ERP system was impacted. This is another example. And digital transformation supports you with data integrity. So the article brings an interesting situation that happens to this organization in which failing data integrity hinder the capability to bring a product to market. When the was a blooming organization and thriving. So these are the consequences of not keeping part to part with digital transformation. So in a nutshell, I like to quote this article in which Henrik Overly, the VP of Better, mentions that there is no room for failure. Now, even more, when we have technological advantage to transform our business, there is no room for failure. And as leaders on organizations, it's our responsibility to bring innovation through technological advantages. Now I would like to talk a little bit more about how STARLIMS solutions support the optimization and digital transformation. And we offer a complete unified solution. Not only we offer a laboratory information management system, we offer a laboratory execution system that supports laboratories to streamline in-lab execution with a modern touchscreen user interface. Also, we offer an integrated solution with electronic laboratory notebooks that reduce everything that has to do with paper documentation. So imagine that you have to document your methods to the T and demonstrate consistency. With the ELN, you're going to be able to execute your method and document in a consistent way, eliminating the need of notebooks, logbooks, and many disparate paper-based systems necessary to document method execution. Also, our unified solution have a portal which is fully integrated, and those support the clients that have to handle other customers, the material testing requests. So with this portal, our customers are able to exchange information without the need of emails, exchange of phone calls, or losing data, and there are a lot of back and forth when this kind of modules is not available, and automatically send results and certificate of analysis as soon the material testing is completed. So that's powerful. We also have what we call the scientific data management system for those laboratories that manage scientific data that needs to version the data, route and approve scientific data that can be handled through our SDMS. And also the SDMS help organizations with the parsing of instrument data. So as long as you have an instrument that is attached to a computer that produce an output visible to the human eye, you're going to be able to real-time capture that data, allowing the laboratory centralize all the processes associated to material testing. On top of that, we support mobility. We have mobile solutions for those laboratories that handle sample collection and even testing outside the laboratory settings. And an ancillary solution called Advanced Analytics that provides a clear overview of what I call the health of the laboratory, in which you're going to be able to see how efficient your laboratory is operating, from the turnaround time, from utilization of resources, equipment, analysts, from looking from the perspective of what are the products that are giving you the majority of out of specs. And we have a cloud offering for those companies that want to move away from on-premise installation and want to remove the headaches to have to maintain an infrastructure. So it's a total unified solution, meaning that there is no more finger pointing in between different vendors. When you have ancillary solutions from different vendors, the total cost of ownership is less because it's one support system, less strains in terms of validating disparate or third-party vendor system because everything is fully integrated. So that's one of our differentiators. In terms of security and the importance of security for us as an organization and our product, we take security very serious. We ensure and we're committed to protect not only the product from cyber attacks and subject our products to heavy simulations of attack to ensure that there are not loopholes, but also in terms of our data of our customers that we host on the cloud, we protect for confidentiality, integrity, availability. Our cloud operations, we offer full cloud services, meaning that your laboratory doesn't have to worry about the infrastructure that is necessary whenever you have a rollout of a solution, a laboratory informatics solution. So we offer 99% of availability. It includes everything, meaning licensing, maintenance, support, the three main environments, development, testing, and production, and infrastructure maintenance, like installation of upgrades, patch management, malware protection, system monitoring, and notifications. And another important consideration is the architecture of our solution. And our solution comprises of a multi-tier architecture, which is separated, which makes us unique, meaning that the technology layer is separated from the application layer and the customer data. And why this is important is because the world is changing, so technology is changing. So new operating systems are out of the door, new databases are out of the door, almost in monthly basis, if not in weekly, cyber security patches. And having a separation of technology allows us to release newer versions of the technology layer that our customers can benefit from without touching the application layer or customer data, and by in turn, reducing the time necessary to perform validation and minimizing the impact on those two other layers. So by consequence, the total cost of ownership and revalidation effort is less. In terms of the technology platform, every day we're looking at opportunities of improve and provide the latest and greatest technological advantages in terms of not only security, but connectivity and data encryption. In terms of interoperability, looking at adding capabilities to operate with other enterprise systems through REST API capabilities, including new technological advantages to allow customers that are heavily specialized that need to customize the software, although our solution is suited for the manufacturing, pharma, biotech, medical device, food and bev, and others manufacturing industry. But for those specialized customers that need to customize for some reason the software, code layering allows the customers to encapsulate the changes and keep upgrading and keep the pace with the changes of our software, always looking at enhancements of printing capabilities. And now we offer a standalone scientific data management solution for those customers that already have a laboratory informatics and are looking for parse instrument data real time from their instruments. Our QM solution is tailored for the regulatory compliance laboratory that needs to ensure consistency, control, data integrity. We're constantly looking to the core capabilities in terms of audit trail to comply with Part 11, to look at what is new in the regulation and ensure that we comply with the newest standards. Our solution also is leveraging on HTML5 modern technology that allow us better interoperability and browser agnostic capability. And every day we're looking for opportunities of how we can improve our software. I mentioned the portal and graphical workflows to navigate our software easy, that make it intuitive. One of the latest additions has been the LES, and as I mentioned, it's a very powerful generic workflow engine that allow laboratories to perform their method execution in a guided approach using a modern touchscreen interface for method execution. And we are expanding our solution to support biotechnology operations and organizations that need to handle biological samples and their corresponding container and testing. Our solution also provides out-of-the-box interfaces with SAP HANA, which is the latest and greatest solution from SAP. So literally think about being able to, once the information of a batch gets created within SAP, the ability of automatically send that information to STARLIMS solution and assign a profile of testing automatically, and once the results are entered, to be able to push that information for disposition of the lot to SAP real time. And in terms of performance, we support big organizations that have multi-site locations to assess and determine the best infrastructure for the multiple locations. So when I look at our solution, STARLIMS solutions, I see it as what I call the data integrity hub, in which you can connect the dots. And the dots are within the life cycle of product development. It starts with the discovery. It starts with the technology transfer to production and to where you test the stability of your product, no matter the product, where you can connect the dots of experimental work to document your intellectual property, where you can leverage on the power of integration of and interoperability by connecting to enterprise system, by connecting out of the box with chromatographic data systems such as Empower and Chromeleon, in which you can trace your laboratory operations for your material testing in detail, through the change of custody, to the lot genealogy, to the granular level of the test results, and automatically being able to look at products that might be out of spec and automatically trigger an investigation or retest to ensure that your method execution is consistent, that guide your analysts to follow a guided approach for testing, to have visibility of your laboratory health with advanced analytics, and comply, very important, with the 21 CFR Part 11 electronic records, electronic signatures, and really ensure that you're meeting the data integrity imperatives of have the data attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. So not only the solution is the Data Integrity Hub, but I call it the Interoperability Hub. So in a nutshell, digitalization is the future. The labs of the future needs to leverage on data and technology to keep differentiating and modernizing. And the laboratory has an integral part on the digital transformation and even as in the bottom line. Therefore, the importance of partner with vendors that provide a single source of truth solutions to support the laboratory of optimization effort and digital transformation. So I encourage you to look more about our solution, to inquire, and without further ado, now I'm gonna introduce Brendan McMahon, and Brendan is gonna discuss the STARLIMS Automated Validation Framework and Testing Kit and the importance of this automated validation framework in your validation efforts whenever you are embarking in the journey of implementing a laboratory informatics system. So Brendan?
Yeah, thank you, Janet. I appreciate the introduction. Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Brendan McMahon, and I'm a software tester here at STARLIMS. And today we're going to discuss how we can utilize automation in our environments, in our laboratories, or whatever our workspace is for our validation activities, our verification activities. And those activities can be related to operational qualifications or performance qualifications. So let's dive in and we'll see, we'll get to what I'm talking about in a moment. So to begin with, we generally, when it comes to testing, we have two things that we focus on. We look at our verification or we look at validation. And our verification is normally if I have something, in this case, I have an application because I'm thinking software, but it could be a machine, could be a piece of equipment. It's the design of it. I want to verify that that design is working properly. And then validation is that application, that equipment, is it working the way that I need it to work for me? And most of the time, when you're implementing a LIMS in your environments, you're focused mainly on the validation. I need to make sure that this LIMS, that it's going to work for me. It's going to do what I need it to do in my environment. In either case, both verification and validation, they take a lot of time and they take a lot of effort. And normally that effort is manual. Someone is manually checking to make sure that something meets the design specifications, or they're manually checking to make sure that the equipment meets their own intended use. And from that manual effort, we're led to an issue that I'm sure many of you have seen before, where we want to focus on doing some form of testing or verifying that something works properly. And we run into this age-old project management dilemma where I have to think about the cost of how long, or the cost that it will take to test this product, the time it will take, and what's the quality of the testing that I'm going to perform. And the industry joke is normally you can only pick two, because one of them will suffer if you pick two of them. So for example, I can make sure that it's a low cost and high quality implementation, but it will take a long time to do. Or I can try to focus on my quality and my time, but it's going to be very expensive. Or I can focus on my time and costs, but my quality will suffer because it's going to be low cost and it's going to be done very quickly. So my quality will end up suffering. The point of automation is we want to try and eliminate this scenario. We want to be able to reduce costs, reduce time, and increase quality so that we don't have to worry about this dilemma when it comes to managing projects or worrying about what it is we can or cannot test. So let me give you some examples of how we've done things here at STARLIMS using some real data. So there's a lot of information on the slide right now, so I'm going to break it up into chunks. On the left, we have an example of an enterprise solution. And in this example, I'm using the quality manufacturing solution that Janet has been discussing in the beginning of this presentation. That quality manufacturing solution is really one big collection of 400 or so individual applications that we at STARLIMS have made integrate with each other. If we wanted to break it down to its core pieces. And when we test this application, me as a tester here, there's a few things that I have to worry about. For the cost, we have to, and those of the management, we have to worry about the cost of what a QA engineer, what their salary would be. How long does it take them, or what's the cost to create these test cases that a QA engineer ends up making? What's the cost to have these test cases that we create executed? And then the maintenance of these test cases. And then one of my favorites is the downtime that's needed to do testing. So here in the United States, as of March of this year, the average salary for a QA engineer was about $70,000 US dollars. So you're going to be, for us here, that means that on average, we're paying one person to create test cases, execute them, maintain them, and then while they're doing those three things, there's going to be downtime that they can't do anything else, especially if this is all manual. So if I'm creating a test, I won't be able to do anything else because I'm creating that test. Or if I'm executing the test, can't do anything else. So that's the dilemma with cost. You have those things, generally, those are the things you have to worry about. And then when it comes to our time component, we have a similar bucket of items that we have to worry about. When I create these tests, execute and maintain them, how long will that actually take? So for example, when we were doing manual testing, our manual testing, I'm going to describe it as we have a test script that we use for either verification or validation. And that test script is a document that you would read and fill out either electronically or on paper to state that you followed a sequence of steps and the expected result matches what the actual result was when you perform those steps. And we found that the average time that it took to do those paper scripts was about 10 pages per hour. And once again, it's the only task that I can do if it's manual. Same thing with the maintenance. When it's on paper, I can only work on that one thing. We found that when we converted over to our automation, we drastically increased that time, which I'll get to in a moment, where I could now do, instead of 10 pages per hour, if we were to do a direct one-to-one conversion of that paper test into an automated test case, it was about 163 pages per hour. If we wanted to look at it, the same equivalency of pages per hour as a metric. And one of the advantages is that I can now multitask. I don't have to focus on just running a test or watching this test run. It does it on its own, and I can work on something else. And then, of course, we have the downtime again. When it comes to the time variable, how much time is it going to take to actually do the testing? Whether it be verification or validation, what am I going to lose when I need to test this implementation? And then finally, we have our quality component. And quality is not just how good is the product or how good is my implementation. It's also how repeatable is everything. So the data that I've gathered, is that data good? If I run these test cases again, am I going to get the same data? Because if I'm not, there's an issue somewhere. Either it's with the tests themselves or the people that are executing them. And that's where the human error component comes in that Janet had mentioned, whereas the Journal of Lab Automation mentioned that it's about 10 to 30% likelihood of human error through manual tasks. And that shows up in our quality when testing is done manually. And a lot of it relates to this repeatability aspect. If you give 100 people the same manual test case to execute, you're going to get vastly different results. And I have seen it myself here at STARLIMS. We also have whether or not there is adequate objective evidence being captured in that manual testing, something that I can show an auditor or something that I can show a prospect customer. If I have a laboratory that I have customers come to my lab and they want to see the items that I can provide for them in my laboratory are these results that I have from my test and the accuracy of my results, can I have some objective evidence of those results from those tests? If I can't provide that, then my quality is really not creditable because I can't prove my quality. And then, of course, we have the coverage of my testing. How much of my testing am I actually covering when it comes to the implementation of my LIMS or any other system that I have in my lab? So on the right side, I took one of our QM releases that I was a part of about 2 years ago, maybe 3 at this point, mainly because last year, 2020, if I'm like most of you, last year kind of just disappeared from my life. So I can't remember if it's 2 years ago or 3 years ago at this point, but we had a release that was all manual testing. And once again, that means paper tests, either in Word or Excel or in a digital tool. What we use here as a digital tool is application lifecycle management from Hewlett-Packard, which I believe is now owned by another company, but at the time, Hewlett-Packard was the owner. And the entire verification activity for this release of the QM product, it took us, the testing team, 20 weeks to complete. That's 20 weeks of downtime, 20 weeks of cost, just for us to verify that the product was working properly so that we could release it to you all. That was a massive undertaking. And that includes us finding, running our test scripts, finding issues, reporting those issues to our development team, the development team fixing those issues, us on the testing team rerunning our test cases to verify that the tests work and that the issues were resolved, so forth and so on. The next release, we implemented automated testing in our pipeline for our testing activities. We spent an entire year where we went through all of our requirements and we created an automated test case to verify that each requirement was being met. And we were able to identify some that can't be automated, and the large majority of them could be automated. At this point, I believe for our quality manufacturing testing, over 90% of our product's functionality is covered in an automated test of some kind. And so we still have some manual testing, mainly because it's difficult to eliminate all manual testing. But if we can leverage automation, we can eliminate much of it. And just through that conversion process, we went from 20 weeks plus of testing activities down to 4.5 weeks. And that includes the same things that I mentioned, where we ran test cases, found issues, reported those issues, our development team fixed those issues, we reran our test cases, verified that the issues were fixed. All this activity in 4.5 weeks instead of 20 plus, which is amazing for us. It helped us out so much. And so we figured we wanted to be able to share some of that success with our customers and highlight how this digitalization, as Janet mentioned, of our testing activities is a huge impact on our flow and how it can help you as well. Because with these changes, we were able to now, in the long term, our costs are being reduced because we no longer have as much downtime focused on testing. And our time frame is now reduced, which is helping our costs as well. And our quality has increased, which I'll get to in a moment to explain how the quality has been increased. But we have more objective evidence than we had in the past to prove that our testing is high quality. We have higher accuracy and repeatability because we can take the same test and execute it infinite number of times, and we can get the same results each time. And our coverage has been expanded because whereas a single person may only be able to execute 10 pages per hour, you would have to use risk-based approaches to decide what you test and what you don't test from release to release. We can test more of our implementations at one time. So our coverage is greatly increased from what it could be in the same time frame. And so what we've done is we've made some automation kits. The first one we made was our quality manufacturing automation kit. And this is an automation framework with all of the out-of-the-box test cases that we created for our quality manufacturing product. Now, when it comes to automation, the most important thing is to have a framework. And the framework is basically a collection of rules and the structure or processes that you're going to follow when you do testing activities. And it's not just the test cases themselves. It could be what application are you using? For example, here at STARLIMS, we're using a tool called Test Complete, which is made by a company named SmartBear. But regardless of what tools you use, the first thing you have to do is make a framework. And we spent an entire year making this framework. And so we figured rather than just keep it to ourselves, we could make that framework available to everyone else. In addition, what languages are being used? Because we're talking about automation, we're also talking about programming. And so we're using JavaScript with our automated test cases. That is a language that we have used, which is a very standard scripting language, which has a low barrier of entry when it comes to technical knowledge, which is excellent for laboratories that already have personnel on hand that know how to do basic programming activities, or if someone was looking to get new talent. It's an industry standard language that most software engineers will know. And then we have the logic that's being used in our framework. So for example, let's say I have an application. In this case, I have an application image here for job descriptions. What's my process for a test if I wanted to add a job description? In a manual test case, normally I would open up this application, I would click add, a window will appear, I'll type in that information of what the job description's name would be, I'll click OK, and I have my test. Through automation, how can I make this test repeatable? If I use the same name, the system might give me an error. So what is the logic for our repeatability of these tests? So that is what the framework is. And so what we've done is we've taken all this, we created our framework in Test Complete, which allows us to create and edit and run our test cases. We use a second tool made by SmartBear called Test Execute, which lets us run our test cases. And then we use version control built in with a source control system. We use Git to do our source control. So we have a history of every update made to our test cases. We can verify that a test wasn't modified when we go to execute it based on the version control. We can collaborate with each other, so forth and so on. And the way that this framework is organized is all that we've done is we've taken each application that we have in the system. I'm going to use examples here of application 1, 2, or 3. And we've taken those applications and we've created test parts. So if application 1, if I want to create a test, add test, that is the functionality that exists, and delete test as a functionality that exists. So we just made test parts. That's the framework itself that will go ahead and create a test for me. And then we take all of these parts that we've created for each application, and we can combine them into an actual test case. So for example, for my test manager application, I can add a test. Then in my sample manager application, I can add a sample. I could add another sample, then delete a sample, add a sample. And then for my results entry application, I could add results to one of those samples. So I can just combine all of these test parts to make my own test case as needed. And then I can input data from outside of my test cases as needed. And so through all of this, we're able to execute our test cases and get a log, which shows what happened on the screen. Here's an example of one of our logs where I can see that I have an application. In this case, it was client categories. It might be a little difficult to read. And it was running the client categories test case. And I can see screenshots of every action that was performed. And so in summary, verification and validation can be time-consuming and expensive and risky quality-wise. So we created a framework using Test Complete and Test Execute, which is a product from SmartBear, which is organized by application so that we can create test cases which help reduce the time needed to do validation and verification activities, reduce the overall costs, and improve the quality of our testing. And so we wanted to share the information with you to show the benefits of it. And that's all that I have in this regard. So I believe I'm going to hand it back to Carolyn so that we can start the Q&A session. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Janet and Brandon, for the excellent presentation. So let's jump into the questions and answer session. So the first question that I have here, I believe it's for you, Brandon. So if we want to get into automated testing with STARLIMS, is Test Complete the only tool that works with STARLIMS?
I'm sorry about that. I was muted. It is not the only tool that can be used. There are other tools that could be used, but Test Complete is the only tool that works with our framework that we created. For example, Selenium is another automation tool that does work with Test Complete, or I'm sorry, with STARLIMS, but it does have limitations on how it interacts with the different components of STARLIMS. We did a huge analysis of different tools on the market, and we found Test Complete to be the best solution for creating automated test cases with STARLIMS.
All right, thank you. The second question that I have here is, what technical knowledge is required from someone who will run and or create their own automated test cases?
Great question. For creating tests, or for running test cases, not much technical knowledge is required at all. Very, very basic JavaScript knowledge would be needed. If there was, for example, a bug, or by bug I mean maybe there was an issue through the test when it was executed, and we want to try and figure out what caused a test to not pass. Very basic JavaScript knowledge. And by basic, what I mean is you could go on the internet, learn JavaScript, like teach yourself in a week, very, very basic JavaScript knowledge, and you would be able to run the test cases and understand what's going on without issue. When it comes to creating the test cases, a little bit more knowledge would be required. You don't have to be a JavaScript expert by any means, but you would want to be comfortable with JavaScript as a programming language.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So that's all we have time for today. Any unanswered questions will be responded to via email. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. As we leave the webinar, a survey will appear on your screen asking you to rate the session. Please take a moment to provide your feedback. On behalf of STARLIMS, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's webinar and hope to see you all again soon. Goodbye.